Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Jayson Graves, former counselor and therapist, and now a coach for those facing persecution, focusing on persecution recovery. Welcome to the studio, Jason.
Why, thank you, brother. What an introduction. I got the very special guest introduction, huh?
I give
Special, very
I give
special.
everybody a very special guest,
Okay.
and most people make a comment, but everybody's very special, especially in the eyes of the Lord, right? Like,
This is true.
that's
all
how it
very
works.
Special. The kids these days have a different meaning for that word special, but oh well. We'll just go with the original, right?
Well, I think I know what special meant in my day.
Yeah.
Was probably not appropriate for air right now.
Right.
But it did not mean what it means today.
Yeah.
So, Jason, you lived in Colorado for years.
Yeah.
And you've moved. Now you're in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Happily married. You have tons of kids.
Yeah, something like that. Happily married for 23 years this fall. And we wouldn't really say that we have tons of kids, but they're tons of fun. So our two girls are 18 and 15 years old.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have this lifelong marriage. These two wonderful girls that have been raised in a Christian household, and I can only imagine they're phenomenal young ladies.
We're pretty impressed with
But your story is, I think if you're going to listen to this story in full, you're going to be blown away because what happened to this man is absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride, quite a fun and difficult ride at times. But yeah, it kind of all started with we came to Colorado in 2004, opened up this practice, helping folks with, amongst other things like sexual trauma, sexual abuse, addiction issues, and amongst all those things, unwanted same-sex attractions. So we did that for many years. It was great. Had a lot of fun with it. Had a great team of people and did things like radio shows like this and a TV show for a while. Volunteered for board of directors. I was a speaker for Focus on the Family for a while, New Life Ministries, and a lot of really neat opportunities. Had my own TV show for a couple seasons and did a radio show for about 5 years. And so, yeah, it was just a lot of fun. And then some interesting things in our culture started to change where the activists, the anti-Christian activists, were always kind of in the background, always kind of there. But over the years, as the culture started to change in their attitude, in its collective attitude towards unwanted same-sex attractions, so did the way I started to kind of position myself as a way of being able to always help the people that needed our help, but also to avoid some of the drama and the unnecessary persecution. I learned a lot along the way, and especially when in 2016, out of nowhere, a former client who was rather activistic apparently made some comments to his current counselor about a year after we were done working together. And those comments were of such a nature that this counselor, being a mandatory reporter, had to tell someone. So they chose to tell the state licensing board, which is interesting because, if somebody makes comments indicating abuse, wouldn't you think to go to the police first? I would. But these people didn't for some reason, which is curious. So instead of going to the police, they went to the state licensing board in Denver. Here we are in Colorado Springs. Those two regions don't necessarily play well together because geopolitical, positioning, etc. Well, I thought that this was going to be very much like, okay, answer this complaint. My attorney and I, answered it right away. Nothing to hide. But the state licensing board really kind of ran with it and seized upon that as an opportunity to what I surmise and just in my evaluation and estimation is just nothing short of political persecution. So we tried to deal with that. It was like nothing would ever satisfy them. It was a simple case of, at the end of the day, my word against somebody else's. And even though the Colorado Springs Police Department eventually got involved, which turned out to be like the highlight of the whole venture, because after a 2-hour interview with 2 detectives in my office with my attorney, they said something that gave me the most relief of the whole process. They said, Mr. Graves, we've interviewed this person and their family, and we want you to know that now that we've interviewed you, after this interview, we now consider this an inactive investigation. Well, the relationship, if you could call it that, with the state licensing board was such that when I submitted that in writing from the Colorado Springs Police Department to the board, they wouldn't even acknowledge my email. They wouldn't accept it into my file. They weren't really seemingly that interested in hearing any kind of truth or objectivity whatsoever. So then, we went up to talk to them in an open board meeting, which is like our right to do so. They broke administrative law by, even though we followed all the protocols and, let them know in advance, they did not let us speak in the meeting. They did not let us address the board. Of the 25 cases that they were, and mind you, this is not a criminal case. This is not a lawsuit, anything like that. It's simply like a disciplinary case about my license. And we were not allowed to talk to them, but also they made us identify ourselves in court and, beforehand, and asked nobody else to do that. Furthermore, when it came time to deliberate about my case, they also broke the law by illegally deliberating behind closed doors on my case and my case only. So it was really strange during that maybe hour or 2 hour long meeting. Several people came in from like a side door, mysteriously, and would just kind of talk to people in the middle of this hearing and then just vanish. So it was very strange, very curious. And it got to the point where, because they were so unreasonable and there was nothing I could do, they made me take a mental status evaluation where you sit down with like a psychologist and they evaluate you for 2 hours. I recorded that. I have her on tape saying, I find nothing wrong with you. But they also prejudiced her, it turns out, the state, by giving her, instead of giving me the direction like they had been all along directly, they gave direction through her. She was not an employee of the state. She was an independent contractor hired by the state to give me an independent evaluation. They gave her direction to tell me that I was to take further testing, which that was completely alarming and surprising. That's just completely inappropriate to do. But it was just, this was part of it. At every turn, it was just lack of cooperation, communication, fairness, or any kind of, hey, what exactly can we do to please you? There was none of that. So then, and here I am being evaluated and told everything's fine, but yet they had already decided in their minds that they had more testing for me to do. Well, the nature of the testing was akin to that what you would give an actual sex offender, somebody who had been, adjudicated. And that was something that my attorney was not allowing me to do. Like I was fine with things like taking a lie detector test, but because lie detector tests are not allowed in court cases, actual court cases, because of their notorious for being, false, having false positives, he was not going to let me do that. So it just got to the point where I tried everything I could. I was in a period of my life where I have, a wife with, fighting a disability. I have 2 small children at that point. And there was just too much with a practice to run and 100 clients to take care of for me to continue to deal with this, was my attitude at the time. So I told my attorney, why don't you just negotiate with them that I'll voluntarily surrender my license, and so I can move on with my life, because I really didn't need the license to be able to help people. And so they dragged their feet on that, and they waited till several deadlines passed. Even though they agreed to do it, they waited for several deadlines to pass so that they could suspend my license for like a week or two before they actually accepted my voluntary surrender, so that they could also put in the paperwork that I was likely to have been found guilty of not following their directions by taking this other test. So it's like they're just creating sort of this false narrative on paper that appears like I'm guilty of what I'm being accused of, when really I'm just, guilty in their eyes of not doing the testing that they suggested that I do. So that was the long and short of it. So I moved on from that in 2017. About a year and a half later, we moved to Arizona. I changed my practice to a coaching practice. In 2017, we moved to Arizona because my wife's health, is the best climate for her to be in. And so then I gave up my practice in 2019 because I was just ready to move on and do other things. And I went into real estate and things like that. Well, I had an opportunity to take a job at a mental health clinic, and the nature of it was a little bit different from what I had done in the past, but it was all, mental health based and, drugs and alcohol and things like that. So I understood addiction. It was going just great. I was employee of the month, and we were starting new programs because we were growing, because, I was really helping things and being a steady presence there. I've never had any problems with any clients, never had any complaints, never had any disciplinary actions whatsoever from, my leadership, the CEO, HR, nothing. And out of the blue, one day, I had updated my LinkedIn kind of naively, just for local networking purposes. Not and with a thought in my mind that I would have to really, be careful about activists trying to harass me. And out of the blue, I find out that these activists had called our station, or the corporation, which was a very woke, DEI-based organization in another state, and they had told them, "Hey, do you know how you have this quote unquote conversion therapist working for you, who's a real creep and all these other slanderous things?" And so they put me on paid administrative leave, and they said, CEO was like, "Don't worry, we'll have you back in a week. We'll get this all sorted out. Just need to do diligence and all that." But the corporation let me go, and so I was like really like surprised, but not surprised. I think it was shocked because it just came out of the blue, but not surprised in the sense of DEI is going to do what DEI is going to do, and I don't fit in their boxes, and so. There you go. So since then, I've been just looking at, okay, what does God have for me to do instead? So here we are.
Well, and there's a wealth of things that we can get into here. Number one, I mean, the cost of fighting these battles can be overwhelmingly fiscally, not taking into account the emotional toll and the stress on your family and the stress on yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon to see people go, you know what, I can't fight this. Either I don't have the financial resources or whatever. I can't fight this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's oftentimes why you see lawsuits being settled early on and things like that, because people just go, I can't fight it. I don't have the money to fight it.
Yeah, there's that. Even if you're not, even if you are a litigious type and inclined to get all sue happy and stuff, that's not really like who I am. But yeah, no, there's also a big investment in that kind of thing required, like tens of thousands of dollars. Even when I was going through the defense of my license here in Colorado, my attorney bill was something like $9,000. My insurance only covered $5,000. But this was another highlight of the whole process. My attorney, who went on to be the law clerk, the singular law clerk for Justice Gorsuch, told me, "Jason, I'm going to write off the remaining $4,500 of your bill because you should have never had to go through this." And that was just like such a huge blessing. And a big affirmation of here, this person's had their eye on this from this process from day one and just really stood by my side.
So I think it's clear that you were used as a political pawn because we didn't see too much later. I mean, that's when conversion therapy became illegal in the state of Colorado.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that here in a second, but we've got some other things to kick off before that point. But the other thing is that these independent boards, and we're seeing this more and more and more, is that they're not judicial elements to them. Like they're not part of the judicial system, and they act independently, and they're allowed to function however they want. And you don't have the same rights that you would in a judicial trial, but these are the people that are affecting what happens in your career and in your life. And the more and more that we have these independent boards popping up, the more and more people are weaponizing them against people that don't fit in their little box of what is woke. And I've had these boards used against me. And so, they dropped the case, but the stress, the time, all of that, the energy that it took, it's just overwhelming. And we're seeing this happen more and more. And we keep getting more and more independent boards. And it's scary because when your career and your ability to sustain your family financially is given over to a group of 5, 6, 7 people that are going to ultimately decide the outcome of your life
Who
at
don't
the
know
time,
you, who've never met you,
who don't know you,
never talked to you.
correct? Who have no judicial power, who have been put in place by whoever the administrator is at the time, and that it's scary, and that's where we're heading to as a country. The idea that you have this constitutional right to defend yourself does not exist in those realms.
Right. These are people who are professionals who get paid to be in these unelected positions, who are not even like assembled in a fair manner geopolitically. It's not like you have, okay, we're going to have 4 people on this board from Denver and 3 people on this board from Colorado Springs.
And 2 are going to be Democrats, and 2 are going to be independents, and 2
Doesn't
are going to be
work that way.
Democrats. Yeah, correct.
They're all appointed, and who's the governor at a time? Somebody that doesn't agree with my, worldview. So, it's just a trickle down. And so, yeah, these things happen, and it is weaponization, as you mentioned. It's very unfortunate, but my message is that, look, this is persecution. As Christians, persecution is part of the proposition when it comes to following Jesus. So we're not here to whine or complain about it. We're not here to put them on trial. They're just doing the only thing they know how to do with regard to, hey, my worldview says that if you don't agree with me, I am supposed to attack you because you're just the enemy. As Christians, we're called to love our enemies, and we're supposed to pray for those who persecute us. Easier said than done, easier to say than remember. Our nature is, to act very differently and act in kind. But, as mature believers, we have to see it as persecution is an opportunity. It really is. It's become a blessing because essentially, like, the people who persecute you, the people that have persecuted me are doing me a favor. These activists, whether they're inside the institutions and the hallways of a government, in these bureaucracies, or they're on their own and they just have an axe to grind, they're doing me a favor by identifying themselves as the ones I need to pray for and show kindness to in return. Because essentially, hurting people hurt people. So they're out to hurt people. They've hurt me. They've tried to intentionally hurt me because they're hurting. So what am I going to do? Like, be more concerned about my own life and my own losses and my own struggles? Or am I going to act according to the Bible and show concern for them? That's what we have to do. That's my message. Is our job as believers is to love those who persecute us.
So we're gonna get into what is the godly response to persecution, because I think that's extremely valuable to those that are listening on. But before we step in there, let's step back for a second. Why did you get involved in counseling to begin with, and why did you choose the realm of counseling that you chose?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, a great mentor of mine, who's written several books, once said, this is Gordon Dalby speaking. He said, "The anointing is in the wound." So, in other words, your giftedness comes in part from like the things you've been hurt by and the things you've recovered from, right? And so, like, that was a part of my story. And so I wanted to give back and help others because I got extremely blessed with a lot of help from really competent people who knew what they were doing in order to help me with the things that I was dealing with. So then I went to graduate school and learned how to help people and comfort them in those same ways. And to just say, listen, this is your struggle. Thank you for telling me. What are your goals? How can I help you with those? And to begin to walk that out with them in a comforting and supportive way. Even the term conversion therapy is not an official term. It's just made up as a way to deride, what we actually do. We're not converting people from one thing to another. We're just helping them with their own goals and self-determination to move in a direction with their life and their sexuality and how they live that out according to their own desires.
I mean, this isn't like forcing somebody in a seat and praying the gay away. Like, these are people that have
Right.
chosen to seek counseling for something that they don't want to feel.
Yeah, honestly, it's comical. If you actually believe that it's about pray the gay away, give me a break. Come on. Like,
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to get into that as well. But for right now, we're going to take a brief break. If you're watching online, go to the next video. We're going to talk about the godly response to persecution. I'm going to tell the story of why Jayson Graves is here in the studio today and how we got back in touch after years to bring him in, fly him out, and get him sitting down in this chair next to me. So hang with us, and God bless.
Yeah.